So that is the structuring. So literally, structuring means that you have to determine, say, deciding the line of authority, which means that you have to determine the formal reporting system. I think that's the most important things, right? You have people to do your strategy, right? You have people to conduct action of your plan. However, what you need to do is that you have to arrange who report to whom about what, about the company, about the people, the people in the companies are doing. So you have to design setting the formal reporting system. Simply say that you have to determine who are the bosses, who are the say subordinate, and who are workers, and the who to whom you have to report upon you are asked to do. Right, so a formal reporting system, and you have to also determine the scale, scope of, say, authority, responsibility, duties, and so on. Right, every people in the organization should have endowed with function, roles, missions, tasks. So you have to determine that scope of the job, and also you have to design the communication systems. Right? Like, just think about people here in this organization. A lot of people here. You have to design like how each of you in this room communicate each other. What I call a coordination system. So you should design that coordination part. So a lot of tasks to do in structuring the organization, but altogether we can classify three major things for your organizational structuring or designing the organization. The first one is you have to have your own ideas of like how to divide your labor. You have a lot of people in the organization, so you have to have ideas how you dividing people, right? Simply that means dividing people simply means that you have to design what kind of, say, functional group you have to set, and how many and what kind of people in the organization you put for each particular functional division. Right? Simply say, normally, like company does have several departments, like marketing department, manufacturing, operation, R&D, and so on. So simply say how many people you allocate for each department, functional department. So that is simply what we mean here, dividing labor. And the second thing is you have to decide a former line of authority. Right. Simply, designing a former line of authority means that you have to design hierarchy, right? Right. How many, the size of top management, the size of mid-level management, the size of low-level management, and as well as operators, and you have to draw the line of the formal reporting system among those hierarchy. And lastly, setting the coordination system, like communication system, right? So when you say control in management, that means people control some other people. So control means coordinating other people vertically, while coordination means simply say control other people horizontally. Right? So in the organization here, a lot of people, right? So you have to control vertically, and also you have to control horizontally. So coordination means you have to think about or design mechanisms of controlling people horizontal way. Mostly coordination means communication. So how are you going to let work be done? What kind of a communication you are going to use? Just simply email, right? Or by exchanging email, are you going to let people work together collaboratively, or by say opening or having like formal say meeting, you are going to work on something in more formal way. So just simply like electronic way of communication is fine for your firm, or rather than communicating through that informal electronic way, you may say that we only do something by arranging a formal meeting. So style of communication, style of meeting, you have to design that one. So mostly structuring organization means that you have to have the ideas of all these threes. Like if you see the newspaper or magazines, you may learn a lot about like news on companies restructuring, 구조조정, right? When you say restructuring, that means I think many people may think that company may cut off the job number or reducing the employees. That's the restructuring, which is quite partially right. But when you say restructuring, means that company change, replacing existing these three into other new way, right? Right. So that is simply restructuring. So reducing job cut, job number of jobs. Job cut doesn't necessarily mean representing the restructuring. So today we are going to talk about what are the issues. I mean, what are the fundamental concepts on these three jobs? Some of the concepts you have to memorize. Plus, what are the current issues that a lot of companies nowadays may be having in trouble in designing or deciding all these three aspects. And plus, we will talk about what are the some of the recommended corporate structure that a lot of company may adopt or follow. So based on some of the fundamental structure company following, new styles of structuring keep introducing, adopting, modifying. So we will see how that structure of the firms advancing, progressing, developing to the stage of now. So example of, say, restructuring, kind of example of corporate design, or say renew the organization may be found from the example of Luno, which is French car company which acquired Nissan, which is also another car company in Japan. So that acquisition happened in somewhere early year 2000. So after the acquisition of Nissan, the Japanese firm, the Luno, the French car company, actually introduced new concept of, say, structure organization, the way they actually do the job in car making, which is quite brilliant new ideas at the time, which also follow and imitate by a lot of other companies afterward. We know that actually the Luno acquisition of the Nissan was actually proposed by the Nissan because the car company was in trouble. However, but apart from that, Luno must have some strategic, say, initiative when they actually acquire Nissan. They need to expand the market share, global presence, and also especially Asian market, and also Luno wished to learn knowledge of the Japanese car making skills. So they have a lot of strategic objective when they actually acquired the Japanese car. So that was the strategic choice, strategic initiative of Luno. And acquisition of Nissan was a way of implementing the Luno's strategic initiative. But another question, as we've been discussing so far, is that how then Luno actually implemented their strategic initiative by acquiring Nissan without changing all these things after the acquisition of the Nissan. Luno cannot really realize their, say, strategic initiatives. So if you look at how Luno has changed all this one after the acquisition of Nissan, you may see a kind of some of the quite not really revolution, but new concepts of car making process. Like if you look at car making industry, car making is pretty much like a very divisionalized job, right? Manufacturing guys only look at the manufacturing side. R&D guys only look at the research and development, and marketing guys do the job on sales and after service and so on. So very much divisionalized way of car making. But Nissan actually changed the ideas of making car by introducing cross-functional teams. What is cross-functional teams? Probably you maybe imagine what is cross-functional teams by just looking at the name, cross-functionals, right? Rather than doing something in very specialized and divisionalized way, you do something by together. Like cross-functional team in the case of Luno Nissan acquisition, say rather than manufacturing guy only look at the manufacturing side, the R&D people and marketing people as well as finance people all together form one team, and they are actually involved in manufacturing, right? So say for instance you are R&D department people, or a person for instance. So your job is research and development of introducing new car, new technology. So you don't need to worry about marketing car, sales of cars and so on. But in that cross-functional team, even if you are the R&D engineer, you have to look at, understand sales, marketing practice and so on. So which means that you have to be an expert in your area, but also you should be knowledgeable in all other areas, right? So that's how the Luno Nissan operate their car makings, rather than specialized, individualized, or divisionalized way of functioning. People from all different departments working together to make just one car, one types of cars. Of course, introducing that idea in the organization may face a lot of, say, resistance. Right? Say if you are R&D again, guys, then you need to only concern research and development, and why should I worry about marketing, learn about marketing practice and so on. That's not my job, not my area. Why you distract my specialty and expertise? So at the beginning, the introduction, the cross-functional team really upsetting and raising a strong resistance inside the organization. But because of the leadership of the Luno, they made it, right? So that's the example of restructuring. So the way is that the point is setting, say, very well creative strategic initiative Of course, it is not an easy job, but more important thing is how can you do it? How can you do your strategic choice, your strategic initiative, without designing a creative way of all these three? You just cannot really pursue your strategic initiative. So that's the importance of the organizational design. So let's say then what is a fundamental concept in organizational design? So this is the meaning of organizing, right? So yeah, among many things, you have to remember the top three here. The job of organizing. When you say organizing, that means you have to think about way of dividing people, especially dividing labor in terms of their job and department. Of course, there are some, say, recommended way of dividing people labor from textbook theory and so on from the previous example, but you don't really need to follow that recommended suggestions. You may need to have sometimes create your own way of dividing people. Like cross-functional teams back in the case of, say, Renault one, their way of dividing people was not really dividing people, but rather it is a kind of a mixture of people from different divisions, right? That's how they dividing people. In case of the Renault and Renault-Nissan example. So try to have your own way of dividing labor department and so on. So anyway, that is the first job in organizing and designing the organization. And the second one is how you are formalizing the line of authority. Right? So you have a very tough reporting scheme system in the organizations. Right? When you do something, you are not really individualized in the organization. You have to report that your job, if report of your achievement or job to your boss. Then the question is, like, which boss are your boss? And when you report, in what kind of format you have to prepare to report, right? So you have to design or determine the style of reporting, right? Say, I mean, some of the professors prefer, I mean, I remember in my days in college, some of the professors prefer to submit paper in handwriting. So that's the way of his reporting policy. And some of the other professors may not accept handwriting because I know that many of the students have a very bad handwriting, so they only take, say, typewritten, say, a paper for assignment and so on. So likewise, every company does have their own unique styles of reporting. Right? You may think that why that reporting styles really matter. It doesn't really matter to the company's operation, but actually it does, right? The style of reporting really does matter to your company's operation, especially in realizing your strategic initiative, say, efficiently and effectively. There are a lot of claims that the typical problem of Korean firms are coming from the reporting system. Right? They are too much formal, which may be time-consuming in this fast day of, say, communication, where, say, fast exchanging, say, information, knowledge are necessary. So because of tough reporting system, decision makings are so slow, right? So which actually even slow down of the competitiveness of company at the end. So determine the style of reporting style. Style of reporting is quite important in implementing your, say, strategic initiative. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, you have to design the mechanisms of coordination. So here means communications, right? Do you know really what's going on in, say, engineering department? Do you know what's really going on in mathematics department? We are same students of Hanyang, right? But we just never know what kind of things going on in that department. Which is quite true. Whenever I met the professors from more other departments, I may surprise a lot by their, say, new ideas of introducing program, new ideas of exchanging student programs, and so on. So I already thought that if we, say, communicate more with other departments, probably I may also get better ideas upon some issues of our department. Every big organization does have a silo effects. You and your neighborhood doesn't really know what's going on in each other because of that barrier between the department, between divisions, right? So how to break away that barrier is actually the job of the CEO, right? So that's very important because if you just keep that departmental barrier, then the major, say, the cost to you is that there might be a lot of, say, job duplication, abuse of resource, ineffective use of resource, energy, and so on. So by breaking away that barrier, you can actually share some resource together so that you can do something without really paying extra inputs for your company's job. So this is really clearly the well-defined term, the meaning of the strategy and the meaning of organizing. So we talked about strategy and some of the issues, but at the end, the strategy is simply deciding what should be done, right, to increase your company's competitiveness. And while the organizing or designing, on the other hand, simply means deciding how to do it. Here, it represents your strategies, right? How to do your strategy. That's about organizing. This is what I call organization chart, right? So every company, as I mentioned quite a lot, does have this chart. So you can look at this kind of a map from the company's web pages, official, say, documentation of the firm, and so on. So what this chart represents? So organization chart simply representing kind of a visualized form of current structure of the firm, right? Say, what's the structure? What's the design of what's the organization design of, say, Hyundai? If somebody asks, and if you look at organization chart of Hyundai Motor, then you can get the ideas of how the structure of the firm, of that firm, look like, right? So just like before you travel, before you navigate, you have to really look closely the map to understand the big picture, right? You have to look really closely how the organization chart look like of a particular firm, if you really understand the companies. So if you look at here, you see some cell and some line, arrow, and so on, right? So the line here represents, simply say, line of authority, right? Simply means, say, this is, I think, the organization chart of, say, what kind of company is this? Healthcare and pharmaceutical company, the chart probably comes from, right? So, like say here, this director, of course, they have their own authority, responsibility, duty, but whatever they do, they have to report to whom? Here, right? Executive medical directors. So they are the boss and they are the subordinate, kind of subordinate. So the higher something located, which is what I call a, say, kind of top management, and the cell located below it is what I call a subordinate. So we can imagine how the reporting system goes on here. And the dot line here representing kind of assistant department, which is away from the former divisions or functions here. However, by locating right next to the top management, they are assisting, providing some of the specific knowledge for the need of the top management. So as I mentioned, all company does have this chart, their own unique styles of chart in very different visualized format. But I can tell you that the GM, the General Motors, does for the first time design themselves by using this kind of a map. Right? We know that GM does have a lot of, say, cars. They have different types of cars manufactured in all different locations. So by drawing themselves into this chart, they can, say, visualize where, whom, how they are actually making cars. Yeah, when you actually, the Luno, good question, Nissan case, they introduce cross-functional teams, which means that we see here it is divided I'm not sure whether simply it is divided into different functions here, right? Surgery, patient service, physicians, pharmacy, and so we know that each job here are mutually kind of very distinguishable job, right? So cross-functional team means that the member of that teams are from all different functions or departments, right? So you are actually working with everybody from every different field. So imagine what would be the kind of happening in that team. So people from all different departments with different background knowledge may create altogether chaos at the beginning, but if you are successfully harmonizing them, then you may create, say, a better organization from that teams. And do something on quite different way. So yeah, this is also other types of organizational chart, right? So the title here representing who actually lead that department for each sales, right? There is present, underneath present, you have a vice president. I just didn't mention some function here, but certainly they are in charge of some particular functions. So each vice president in charge of some of the department. So this vice president may be in charge of, say, sales and service. This vice president may be in charge of manufacturing operation. This vice president may be in charge of, say, purchasing and, say, some of the other also, say, finance or some of the finance-related tasks and so on. And each department, if you look inside, also consists of several supervisors and so on. Each supervisor also controls several operative officers and so on. So that's how you design. So the structuring the organization is actually you draw the map like this. You have a strategic initiative on one hand, and you have to create this kind of a map in a way to effectively and efficiently realize your, say, strategic goals. So drawing this kind of organization chart not only apply to the profit organization, but non-profit organization, government, any kinds of organization where a group of large people working together. So kind of a organization chart and structuring, designing organizations actually applied. So doesn't matter whether it is profit, non-profit, halfway profit, or whatever, any kinds of organization required to prepare this kind of a organization chart. Back to again the meaning of line authority. So you have to design who report to whom, what kind of task should be done under which department. So yeah, this kind of organization chart actually describes that one, right? Who report to whom, right? Somebody, some supervisor here at the end reported vice president here. So this supervisor is nothing to do with the vice president here, right? So reporting, a line of reporting can be described here. And what kind of job should be done under which kind of department also can be defined and drawn in that organization chart. So you have to remember, as I mentioned earlier, three tasks you have to do in organizational design conceptually. So when you design the organization, you have to have the ideas. I'm doing this one because of doing those three, right? So having that in your mind, you have to think about several dimensions when you are actually really doing the organizational design. You have to think about, so when you're making this kind of a, say, map, you don't really arbitrarily making this kind of a map. You have to think about some horizontal aspect and the vertical aspect. So let's look at vertical aspects of the organization structure. So vertical aspect of the organization, vertical aspect, horizontal aspect, or vertical dimension and horizontal dimension simply means some of the rules. When you actually draw a map of in geography, you don't draw the map on your own. There are some rules, right, in making that map. Likewise, in making corporate map chart here, there are some rules, which may be kind of a theoretical. So this day, those rules are quite broken, right? So, however, it deserves mentioning here. The first one is unity of command, right? If you have, say, two bosses, is it good or bad? Hey guys, wake up. If you have two bosses, is it good or bad? What? Bad, right? Why? Why bad? What? Yeah, you need. Yeah, so you see, but as you see here, you should have one boss. Why? Do you really agree with this one? Yeah, I agree with you. But if you look at lots of real examples, there are a lot of companies intentionally designed like several bosses. A lot of European companies, for instance, rather than stick to unity of command here, just like one boss better off in the organization, they prefer like several bosses simultaneously. So in theory, we recommend it's better for you to have one boss and one direct supervisor. But in reality, a lot of company may design intentionally like you have, say, two bosses. So talk about
I also do agree that there should only be one direct supervisor, because then there could be conflict and separation.
Yeah, exactly. That may be the problem. But some company may enjoy that conflict. So we will talk about, I think, Thursday. So, but as you see, unity of command is the rule. Right? So in order to reducing the confusion of the, say, subordinates, but whether you agree or not, it is actually up to you. It depends on your industry, it depends on your style of management, depends on your, say, area of business geographically. Say, if your business are actually everywhere in the world, you are doing business here in the world more than 200 more countries, then certainly this one maybe also give too much burden for one supervisor, right? So, because one supervisor, but I mean, if your geographic areas are too wide and everywhere, then in order to stick to this one unity of command, you have to have a lot of supervisors, which may increase the labor cost to you. But anyway, recommended prescription when you are designing the organization, just think about one supervisor. I mean, no hierarchy is seen like you here and like that, right? There's no such hierarchy seen in rare cases. And authority, responsibility, accountability. You have to remember, what does this mean? Authority, responsibility, and accountability. Whatever you design here, the drawing, lots of, say, cell is not enough. Once you determine, say, deciding cells here, you allocate what's the what are the authority, responsibility, accountability for, say, each department. Otherwise, dividing people into that way would be meaningless, right? The meaning of authority, responsibility, accountability. Have a look at the textbook, okay? I think what I particularly like about these three thing is accountability. Whatever your job is done, or whatever duty you have, you are able to justify why the particular outcome, why you particularly behave in that way. So you should justify your behavior. That's accountability, right? If somebody asks you to do something in this or that way, that's not really accountability. So accountability means that you have the initiative for doing something, right? So you justify why you do that one. You just cannot say, I do this one because my boss asked me to do. That's not really the accountability. That's not really the well-designed organization. So authority, size of responsibility, degree of accountability you have to allocate for doing the organizational design. And also, importantly, you have to determine span of control, whether you go for large span or small span, which are very important, especially this day. So we are talking about that one after the break. And also, you have to think about the size of the span of control, right? So simply means that like how many subordinates a manager should have, right? Say, so let's say that you are, say, a mid manager. So you are a mid manager, which means that you have to manage people. So how many people you have to manage? So how many subordinate you have to control and manage that. So you have to decide that one, right? The number of subordinate for managers, right? So like let's say that if you are managers, like mid managers, how many you can control actually? Let's say that I'm the manager and here you are my staff and say 70 staffs are here. That's too big, right? Not really manage and control that many staff. So, so what would be the ideal number of, say, subordinate for each manager may control if you are a manager? So deciding that number of the subordinates allocate to the management under the manager is what I call span of control, right? So when you say tall organization or a short organization, that is related to the concept of the span of control there. So small span means that each individual manager need to control very small number of people, right? While larger span means that each individual manager need to control quite large number of, say, subordinates. Mostly what is recommended is like 6 to 9. I don't know how our textbook described it, but like, or some textbook would say 9 to 12 subordinate for each manager, maybe either size of the span of control, but it is actually varying widely a lot. But the point is, if you say choose, let's say that this is your company and your company consists of, say, 10,000 employees, 10,000 employees. And let's say that span of control of your firm is like, let's say that your policy is that you will have a small span of control. That means each individual employee, manager need to control like less than 6 employees. Since manager need to control small number, less than 6, so the good part is that you can really control that small number easily, right? You know who they are, what they are doing, what things you have to ask them to do. So you can easily understand, monitor, control them under that, say, big size of the firm. But this disadvantage is that since you have 10,000 employees with small span of control, which means that you have to hire or set the position of lots of manager, right? So that's what I call a tall organization, very hierarchical organization, and say kind of a classic Korean organization adopted for their structure. This kind of organization, like some company, looks like this kind of organization, what I call a flat organization, right? The gap between top and low are quite narrow, so right, that's a flat organization. So reaching to the top requires only few layers. That's what I call a flat organization. Or some organization does have a very tall organization here. If you are here, the CEOs are up there, it's like a god. You have to go through lots of, say, layers, right? So in order for you to say something to your, say, boss, just like our president at the moment, you have to go through a lot of, say, layer here, right? Which means they're hard to reach. That's what I call a tall organization. So tall organizations mostly, say, tend to have small number of, mostly the tall organization tend to adopt small span of control. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of manager here, right? And they only control very few subordinates. So that's what I call a tall organization, or what I call a hierarchical organization. A lot of Korean firms actually, Korean styles of organization adopt this kind of a structure. While a lot of, say, Silicon Valley companies, they adopt this one, flat organization, right? So only very few layers. So talk to the top, not that difficult. Sometimes you may say something directly because each manager here control a lot of, say, here subordinates, right? Technically, controlling a lot that many subordinates is not that possible, right? So that means individual subordinate here have a lot of, say, their own say, responsibility, accountability, and duty, and job responsibility, accountability. And also they are endowed with a lot of their own authority for their jobs. So flat organization and tall organizations are actually two typical styles of organization. So you have to imagine, you have to decide what styles of organization you have to choose for your business. I sounds more like negative on these tall types of organization, a lot of hierarchy layers and so on. But however, this is very good for particular types of industry, right? This may be good, fast, very flexible, right? You allow with a lot of accountability, responsibility, authority, so very good in doing something flexibly. However, adopting this one is really bad for certain types of organization and industry. So, so it is actually your preference. If you are, say, founder of the firm and you're about to decide structure, design of your firm, and you're wondering which one to choose between these two, you have to compare strength, weakness, opportunity, I mean, the possible, say, pros and cons. So I'm not really saying what is really effective this day. However, if you look at a lot of literature this day, most of the books ideas and research strongly say that flat types of organization structures are better this day. Right. So much hierarchical layers are not really necessary this day because we are now living in information, living with like very high tech and information processing technology. So communication doesn't really bother you anyway. So why we should have total organization? Flat organization is better. So like a lot of Korean firms now converted themselves from tall to flat. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that flat style, larger span of control always better than the tall or hierarchical organizations, right? So I think if you visit like a lot of service firms this day, you don't even see, say, designated desk, seat, or sometimes hours of working and so on. So I just cannot comment. I just cannot say the company name here. But one of the leading consulting companies in the world, and I have a meeting there with some of the top management people. So it is, since he is one of the top men in that firm, so I thought that he has a big office, good sofa, a nice chair, pretty secretary, and so on. But when I visit there, actually, he doesn't have his seat, desk, anything. So that's the kind of a new styles of, say, hierarchy and organizational design this day, right? Kind of, say, top management, mid-level management, low managers working all together. They share desks sometimes, right? So that is a kind of a trend this day in terms of the organizational design. But anyway, the point here is that you have to determine what should be the size of the control for manager. Here I mean talking about the mid-level managers. Are you choosing small span or large span? And related to that span of control issue, another more important thing is that you have to decide the styles in terms of centralization versus decentralization. So it is also really key issues in your organizational design. Are you preferring centralized organization or decentralized? Centralized organization simply means that the major decision making should be or ought to be done by the top management, while the decentralized organization is the decision making can be made by manager at the bottom. So which means that even if you are the mid-level managers and lower managers, you have a lot of, say, right or say authority to decide something by yourself without really asking your boss. So that is what I call decentralization. So you have to choose what should be the your company's style of decision making: centralized decision making or decentralized decision making. What's your preference? Who here prefers centralized organization? Why?
Because then the subject responsibility and liability is clear.
Clear. You are very smart answer. Yeah. In that sense, yeah. Who contributes something? I mean, who to blame? Right. Simply say it's very much clear. Right. Who made that decision? So, so in the case, who should be responsible for a particular decision? That issue is pretty much clear in centralized organization. So that's why you prefer centralized organizations. What about who prefer decentralized organization? Yeah.
These, it makes you feel like you're actually have an impact on
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
your voice is being heard.
So, exactly. By adopting a decentralized organization, you may create kind of a culture where anyone here may feel, as you say something, being heard from their voices, say something, their own opinions, and so on. So even that one can actually motivate you, right? Work more for the organization. Any example? Any company is decentralized? I think, you're quite right. So that's the example of the decentralized organizations. So again, recommendation from the expert, a lot of example goes like decentralized decision making is better in this day. But again, you should not always say then in that like decentralization are always superior to centralization. I've been reading the article. So, like, if you look at the company, their structure this day, a lot of firms prefer to use like team rather than division or department. When they say team, that represents that our company is run by decentralized system. Just look at team. Sports team, any kind of sports teams, the players actually play on their own, right? They are not really play something by, say, somebody actually orchestrating something like that, right? Individual talented players do play on their own capability. That's the team, right? So when company use team, that means that individual employees, workers, operators are working on their own, based on their own capability, without really waiting, say, a guideline from the top. So, like team-based workings are nowadays a very typical, say, management system of all companies, especially in Korea. So, the team-based management is representing that that company is now using the decentralized organization. But team-based management organizational structure does have a lot of problem. Right? So team sounds like flexible, effective, more responsibility, empowerment of your job, sounds good, but in fact, team-based working does have a lot of, say, negative side effect, and also not efficient in doing something. Right? So we will talk a little bit more about centralization, decentralizations, what's really the going on for each different styles of the dimension in structure. Then, yeah, we will talk about some, say, some of the coordination mechanism of the firms. This day, you can see a lot of, say, new titles of the managers, like the brand managers or project managers, and so a lot of new styles, new types of managers doing different new functions. So fundamentally, the reason to introduce new styles of that manager is simply for providing better coordination. So we will talk about that one on Thursday. Okay. Group project teams. I received your, say, outline, but I unfortunately haven't read it. But I will read it and I will give you back with some comments. Okay. By Thursday.